on this week's episode.
Hey there, Sticky Note listeners. This is your host, Erika Washington. And today's Sticky Note conversation is with former Nevada State Senator Kelvin Atkinson. Kelvin's been through a lot over the past decade. He served as one of the first openly Black, gay senators in the state of Nevada. He also spent some time incarcerated. So we talk about that and more, including his book, where he dives a little bit deeper into his life and where he's now and what happiness can look like. I hope you enjoy today's conversation as much as we did. Thanks for listening. It's been a long time since I've seen you. I know, I feel like, and what's funny is a picture of you came up in my Facebook memories, but it was about 9 years ago. I had a smaller waist and, and bigger hair.
We all did, yeah.
And I was like, oh, this was so cute. It was, I think it was one of like Devin's Neo-Soul happy hours or something like that. But it was a good memory. It's good.
Good times.
So
good times.
I wanted to ask you what I didn't know is, because you're not originally from Vegas,
right?
You're from California.
Correct.
When did you get to Vegas and why? Why did you come here?
Going back, I actually lived in Hawaii at first with my parents, and after they separated, it was about 6 or so. Family moved back to Chicago, where I was born, and my dad moved to California, and so I wanted to live with him. So ended up being in California. So, this Cali kid. So I tell everybody, I was born in Chicago, but I'm totally a West Coast kid. And my first year of college at Howard University, my father was murdered. And so my grandparents no longer wanted to be in California, so they moved to Vegas. And I tried to go back to school, but it was really difficult emotionally for me. So I ended up joining my grandparents here in Las Vegas and found that I really liked it and liked the community, loved the people, enrolled in UNLV and kind of finished my political science degree and it just became home. Yeah.
When your father was murdered, I can't imagine what that felt like in that moment. Like I have had death of parents, but not in that sort of violent way.
Yeah.
What have you been able to do with that grief?
I tell everybody, it's been a little over 30 years now, 31 or 32 years. I think it's a grief that continues, that you have to deal with for a lifetime. I ended up having to get help for it because it was a lot more difficult and a lot more tasking on me as a 21-year-old male than I thought it would be. Although I knew I was really close to my father. He's the reason I'm a Raider fan. Reason I'm a Laker fan. We went to games often. And, in high school, I played football and ran track. He came to my games quite often as well. So I was a daddy's boy, and just really close to my dad. I remember him taking me to Howard and remember those memories and kind of him, me crying when he was leaving and all that. But, losing a parent is difficult, period. But losing one to such a senseless tragedy is it's just, you never, life doesn't prepare you for that. And it is something that, again, I still have days that I cry. I still have days that I cry. There's been times of where I should be happy and excited, that I kind of, am sad because, my dad's not here, or, difficult times, wish he was around to help me get through and navigate through some difficult times. So, it's tough. It still is tough. But, I try to hang on to the good times and remember the very, very good times we had together.
Yeah, I think I was just talking to someone else about it, about how grief just sort of sneaks up on you.
It does.
It don't ask permission to show up. So.
Absolutely, it shows up when it wants to, and it could be at the most, like I said, inopportune times. You're supposed to be celebrating, birth of my child. I'll never forget, the feelings of him not being there, first getting elected, being in the Senate, and then, elevating to majority. The same thing, it just, all those moments always kind of have always had him in mind, and kind of what he would be thinking, what he would be doing. I just, what the look on his face would be.
Right.
What would he be telling me? Just stuff like that all the time. Yeah.
So you went to school for political science.
Correct.
So did you always know that you were going to run for office? And
never. When I initially started my political science track, which was after high school, I thought I was going to get into law. And my dad always, you should be a lawyer, you should be a lawyer. So I kind of thought I was going to do that, and my preference was going to be criminal law. But when that happened to him, I was totally turned off to anything, related to that. So I just, I didn't know that I wanted to chart a course for myself that would be long lasting. And I knew I wanted to get into government at some point. And so I gave that a try and became very successful. So, I did 27 years with the county and retired rather early. So I'm very grateful for that. Running for office was never in my, never, I thought. I think when I grew up, we're probably around the same age, but if you didn't come from a political family or your name wasn't attached to a political family, I don't think that it was even thought of. I think
because it's always a lineage, especially back east or in the Midwest.
Especially back east or in the Midwest. Even California. Growing up, everybody knew who was coming next, and it was just kind of like somebody knew, like Kelvin, Las Vegas, wasn't born there. Everybody knows who he is. Like that's not going to happen. So I didn't, but I at some point started to be in like a political circle. I worked for a Commissioner Dario Herrera as a neighborhood liaison for some time. Worked in the commission office for quite some time. So then began to be around some politicians. The county's lobbyist at the time was Terry LaMorelia, who I was really close with. And really it was more of his urging and pushing and kind of like, you've been doing this for some time now. You've served people's constituencies. How about serving your own? Like, what do you mean?
So what was the thing that clicked that you were like, yes, I will do this?
When he first approached me, I'll never forget it. I had just moved into North Las Vegas. And again, not knowing anything, the district that I had moved into was created as an open district. He knew that because he asked me what was my address, and I told him, and he pulled me to his office and said, look, you're in this newly created. And I'm going, yeah, what does that mean? He goes, you really should consider running for the assembly. It's a new district. It's, was held by Bob Price, but they kind of drew him out, and he's too old. He's not going to move back into the district. He's more likely going to retire. He had some health issues. So I don't know. Let me think about it. It was right before the holidays, so it was either October or end of October, beginning of November. And I thought about it over the holidays, and just felt like, you know what, I can do this. I can, in an open district, and hopefully I get the party support, so I don't have this knockdown, drag out kind of thing. So it was kind of a lot of things that played into it. Yeah. But in the end, I ended up not running that way because Bob Price at the last minute did move back into the borders of the district and decided he was going to run. So while I thought was running in this unopposed Democratic district, I'm now running against a 28-year incumbent in a district that was 67% white, and he's an older white guy and I'm this young black guy. So yeah.
So, but you won.
But I won. I won.
When you won, and then you stepped foot into Carson City, like, what was that? What was that feeling like to be there and know that now you hold this responsibility of actually representing all of these people, even the people who didn't vote for you, the 67% of white folks, you still represented them. Right. How did that feel?
The good thing is, so when we delved down and tried to, because that was the year after redistricting, we found that 63% of the district was parts of his old district, and 37% didn't know him. So And so we were initially like, let's focus on the 37%. They don't know who he is, although he's 28 years. Let's focus on them, and then we'll, try to break into that 63% at some point. And then we decided to do that, and then come to find out that they didn't know him either. Like, he hadn't been in the door, and they just knew his name, and they just voted for him, but they didn't know him. But they knew me because I was at their door. And so what we didn't know on election night, it was ironic because I won 63 to 37%, which was the direct margin of what the district was. So a lot of people that don't look like me voted for me, obviously. But going to your other question about going to Carson City, this was a different beast. I mean, I was 33, I knew it all. I've been in county government.
As we do when we are young.
That's right. I'd been in county government at that time 12 years, because I started the county at 21 as well, 21, 22. And so I thought I knew it all. And county government and state government, two very, very, very different beasts. So it took me a while to find my footing. I remember I was the quietest. I mean, anybody can tell you I was just so quiet, so shy, but I think people thought, oh, is he getting it? Or is it, no, I was a sponge, and I just felt like I didn't need to rush. Yeah. This whole now, I think the now era, because we do have term limits. When I went in, we had just started term limits. So there was a lot of people that were there 20, 25 years, like a lot of people. And so I don't think there was ever a rush to kind of be a committee chairperson or to try to be the speaker or to try to be the majority. I think everybody was kind of like, okay, it's going to be a while in that era. But I think that dynamic has changed because now it's 12 years. And so, if you're not chairing a committee after, especially in the majority, if you're not chairing a committee after, 4 or so years, you're kind of like, okay, when is my turn? Yeah. So the dynamics have changed so much, but it is a different beast. You have, another thing in the county, you don't have, thousands of lobbyists running around the building. So that was different, and people approaching you about, what they perceive. And, you're thinking that they're all going to be in your office, but they try to catch you in halls. They try to catch you in the bathroom. So it's different. Yeah. That building's a lot different than local government. It really is.
So you spent how much time in the assembly?
10 years.
10 years in assembly, and then to the 7 in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And so, of all the legislation that you worked on, what are you most proud of?
There's quite a few things that I'm most proud of. I mean, I'm very proud of what we have been able to accomplish in the state with solar. So I was a big player in that with Senate Bill. Well, at that time it was Assembly Bill 123. What we were able to do. I mean, they were about to start leaving the state because we didn't have a mechanism in place for them to operate and operate in a way that was friendly to customers. Customers want solar, but they don't have $30,000. They don't have $40,000. So working with the industry and figuring that out, and with NV Energy, so that NV Energy can relax some things to kind of allow it to happen as well. Which I worked really, really closely with them. That's one of my signature ones. Obviously, I'm very proud of the Radio Stadium. I think it is, and very glad that I was asked to be brought in early to help navigate that bill, because I always felt that the stadium was less about the Raiders and more about what it would do with revenue in our state. And I think everyone can admit today that it's probably overexceeded our expectations when it comes to the revenue that the stadium has produced and what it has done to our city. I mean, I think teams bring people together, and I think we've seen that with the hockey team. They win more than the Raiders, and and the WNBA and some others, and soon to be baseball, and soon to be A's, and if you've lived or brought up or been in the cities where sports was a major component, I think some folks in this city had issues because they have not been around it. But if you've been in cities where sports teams and others drive certain things and economic force. I mean, you look at Raider games, I mean, they're probably 60, sometimes 60, 65% visitors. But, you know, I always said those people aren't coming here for the day. You know, they're coming for the weekend and they're spending money. And our mantra in the state's supposed to be put heads to beds, and they're definitely going, you know, spending nights in hotel rooms. And so, you know, I think that has changed some people's minds, and I think people are a lot more happy with that. Some stuff I've done in the transportation, although look at it now, Jesus, I mean, we have a cone on every corner. But that's a good thing too. You know, the good thing is
I call it the state flower.
It is the state flower. But the good thing is that tells you that we have transportation dollars. And I remember at one point we didn't have any. And I remember Congressman Horsford now, but was Senator then. We had to work, he and I worked together on a bill to produce transportation dollars because we didn't have any. And so those are some of my very proud moments in legislation. And obviously I can't get around, you know, 2013 when I gave the speech on marriage equality.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about why you decided at that moment to stand up on the floor in Carson City and announce that you were Black and gay. I mean, I knew you were Black, but I was like, oh, look, he's telling everybody. Okay, but what was that moment that you felt like, you know what, I need to say this like this?
You know, I kind of remember the moment like it was yesterday, but I didn't remember what I had done. So I sat on the committee where the bill came from. And so—
And what bill was this?
It was, I don't remember the bill number, and I don't know why, but it was marriage equality.
Okay.
And so I sat on the committee where the bill came from. And so when the bill came to the floor, I just had told myself I wasn't going to speak on the bill, that I knew it was going to be a contentious bill. The Senate was pretty close in vote. I mean, I think it was only 2 or 3 member majority. And so I wanted my colleagues to kind of have their say, the ones that weren't on the committee. And I knew there were quite a few Republicans in opposition, and, you know, and they should be heard too. And so I felt, well, I've said enough. I've spoken enough in committee. Well, Aaron Ford, I remember, stood up and said how at one point in his life he was against it. And he spoke about how things have evolved, how his thinking had evolved, and why he was now for it. And then Justin Jones got up and was teary-eyed and crying about it, and you know, expressed his support for the bill and why, and even said, you know, probably the district that he represents, you know, taking a chance of losing this next election. And I, you know, after they spoke, I said, you know, I just can't sit here and not say anything. And it was in the wee hours. It was probably after 1 a.m. or close to it. And I just felt like I couldn't. What I didn't anticipate was me outing myself. That was not intended. I think when I got up and I tell everybody I could see my heart kind of like through my suit jacket, and it was just pumping. I didn't have a prepared speech. As you know, most of the time when we go on the floor, if you're going to speak on the bill, you probably have something prepared. You have already jotted down notes, or you've had staff prepare a statement. So I didn't have anything. And so I knew if I was going to do it at that point, I was going to have to speak from the heart. And so it just kind of came out. And I still didn't realize it, and I didn't realize the magnitude of it until I sat down, and then my Twitter feed started, like I could see it started going crazy. And then I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And still not realizing that I went to home after, and I know it was probably 2 or 3 by the time we all got home. And I woke up the next morning, and gosh, my Facebook, it was like at capacity. My Twitter, I couldn't, it was just overloaded. I couldn't get onto my Facebook.
What were folks saying?
It was 99% positive. People it had gone viral. So it was on every news station. CNN was calling, Fox was calling. It was for me, and being a politician and that was my viral moment. And didn't even know it was happening. you know, because again, the back east is before us, right? So I'm still sleeping. Like my phone is like, I walk in and my secretary is going, I don't know what to do. I'm not a press secretary. You know, all these people are calling and they're coming, and you know, so and so it really was probably the highlight of my legislative career without even intentionally. To be honest with you, unfortunately, it would be scarier now. I think the way that politicians and people are exposed today is a different animal. When I first was elected, we didn't have to deal with all the social media. We didn't have to, I tell everybody all the time, when I was younger, when we heard about something that happened in D.C., it was a week old already.
Yeah.
And when we heard about something that happened in D.C., the votes were already done. You know, these people are gone, probably on vacation already. Now it's instant.
Yeah.
And if it's not instant, there's a price to pay. You know, well, you know, such and such day, yesterday did this. You haven't done anything. It was just yesterday. Give me a chance. Like it just happened. You know. So they're under the microscope a lot more, but it also opens them up to someone going rogue. I mean, you see what happened with Nancy Pelosi. I mean, you see what happened to the governor's mansion. The governor's mansion in Pennsylvania. How does that even happen? You know, a guy gets in and sets it afire. Like, how does that? Governor has detail like that. Right. The you know, secretary, what's her name, has her purse stolen. At a restaurant the other day. Was the press secretary? Her purse gets stolen. Like what? Yeah, she has detail also.
I would assume. Yeah.
So it's just, you know, I think we're just in different times right now, and to me they're scary. It's scary how people want to make a name for themselves off the backs of other people, at the detriment of other people, and so it's just. I think today I probably would have been a lot more scared because, again, for the people that are against it, you know, what are they going to do? You know, we weren't like judges and other people. We're not protected as far as our addresses are concerned, and stuff like that. So it's a lot more scary. I'm happy it happened then as opposed to today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that you didn't realize that you outed yourself.
I didn't.
And so I don't know that I knew, and I mean, in even reading in the book, that it was a secret. And not so much that, it's always been sort of weird to me that people have to make an announcement about anything.
Absolutely.
But for the LGBTQ community, it does seem to be where people expect some sort of like, you know, this is when I came out, like like you have to have this moment. But for you, I think, one, I don't think that I didn't know, but I don't think that I'd ever really thought about it. So I didn't think about it as that was even a moment of like outing. It's just like you just happened to just say it louder to other people who may not know you at all.
You know, and I think you just hit the point. It was the people who did not know me. Because my family knew. I mean, I had a partner for years. My daughter knew. My daughter's mom, everyone around me knew. Everything was at my house, you know. So every function, you know, so but to the magnitude of, like you said, I personally, I just have to admit, I personally was shocked at how many people didn't know, you know, who were like, I had no idea, you know, like I was actually shocked. I didn't think I was saying anything that was new. I just thought I was confirming it. Right. If that makes sense.
Did that change the dynamic with anybody?
You know, it didn't. I to be honest with you, I think it made me stronger as a politician. I think that is when I started to see, like, you know, my career catapult somewhat. You know, like, you know, I was, you know, council state governments, they had never had an African American chair in their, you know, 83-year history, and I was the first, but I knew that the LGBT thing played a role in that. You know, now people are like, oh, we need to go out to him because now he's going to have some allegiance, he's going to have some connections to probably some purse strings and other people that we didn't have before.
He's going to bring the gays to the party.
He's going to bring the gays to the party. You know, it's a new purse string. It's a new. So I think a lot of that started happening, and so it did help in some regard, and that's why I always tell people, I think out of all the constituents that I felt that I let down, and I will get into that, was the LGBT community, because by that time they had really kind of like latched onto me and was like, okay, he's got to be, like kind of like, I mean, not obviously on the level of Obama, but like when he ran and was getting the black people, like, okay, he's our hope. Like I never thought I'd see a black in my lifetime, but before my lifetime in, he could be it. So I think some of that happened with the LGBT community was like, okay, so he's the first gay African American majority leader. Okay, we gotta learn. So that started to happen, and like I said, I think that probably what disappointed me the most.
Does that add more pressure or more responsibility to then push certain types of legislation that people then had an expectation that now you have to think more about not just black folks, but now the LGBTQ community?
Well, I think so. I mean, I don't necessarily say it was pressure, but I think it goes with the territory. I mean, I think if you're going to use the terms, and if you're going to say I'm the first black LGBT this, or you're going to say I'm the first LGBT that, then you should wear the crown and make sure that you're looking out for the very people that you're claiming to be proud to be a part of. So I don't know if it's pressure. I think that it does change a little bit of that. Like before then, I'd never introduced bills that were quote unquote LGBT. Now I've co-sponsored and I've helped.
So I want to go back just a little bit. Being in the legislature, I think what a lot of folks don't realize is that this is a citizens legislature, as they call it. So you usually still have full-time jobs and all of that. And y'all don't really get paid, like not a living wage by any stretch of the imagination. Yet you still chose to do it for a lot of years. And then you had this viral moment where, you announce that you are this black gay man and why marriage equality is so important. And then there is some backlash to it. There's some issues with that. Why keep doing it? Why stay in this space where, one, you're not getting paid a lot to do it, and politicians, it is really a thankless job in a lot of ways. And if things don't go well, it's your fault. You're the first one that's blamed, no matter what the bigger picture is. What motivated you to keep doing it?
I think there's a lot of things that motivate you to keep doing it. I think the legislature meets every other year. And so there are things you didn't get done last session. And so you've got to wait 2 years to try to get them done again.
Which I still think is just such a silly way.
Which is such a silly way. I mean, most people are annual now. At least they do, an annual budget, and then they have the off year where they deal with the other issues. But I think that's a large part of it, is that when you are in long enough, you continually to have things that didn't get done from last session. You continue to believe that your voice is stronger than next session. So things you didn't get done, things you want to get done, parties that you didn't get to work with or parties you want to work with. I think that's a part of it. And I won't deny that trying to get to a certain place with it is certainly a motivating factor. I knew at some point I wanted to be a leader. So I think that's a part of it. And the other part, I think some people will disagree or don't think it's possible, but you do enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed being incarcerated. Yeah, the pay didn't align with it, and being 32 first running, and I would tell somebody don't do it and make your money first, and then kind of let that be like a retirement job after. Most certainly, because it is hard. It's hard when you have a family, having to live, in Carson City for 120 straight days, and the rigmarole going back and forth. So, those dynamics do, but the longer you're in, that process becomes easier. It becomes easier. You know how to navigate more. You know how to get to and from faster. There's just a lot of things that change. And so it didn't become as much of a burden as some people think. But it is funny when you say about the livable wages, because politicians and Congress and Senate and I mean that we fight for people to make a livable wage, but ours were never where they were supposed to be. So
Yeah.
just always the irony.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So you get to be the majority leader. You get into that space, but then not long after that, everything starts to like crumble right around you. And so, and I remember that time. I remember when you became Senate Majority Leader, and like that was a big deal.
Absolutely.
That was a really big deal for you as a Black man to be this Senate Majority Leader. And you know, to have your spouse there with you and all of that, and then you know, then it was just seemed like there were just rumors floating around, right? Like no one knew exactly what was going on and what was happening. And so when you talk about it in the book, but what I really wanted to like understand is how did this all come to be? Like how did it get to a place where, because you had other business things that you were working on. You had your the Urban Lounge, which was a great little club. It was a beautiful space, and you know, the community liked to come out and hang out, like a lot of good times, right? So you're also being an entrepreneur at the same time. Where did the mistake happen?
So let me see. It's funny because for a while I wasn't able to talk about it, and now.
Was that because it was hard, or because just you couldn't talk
No,
about it?
just legally I couldn't.
Right.
And so I would say it wasn't anything that happened overnight, right? If you look at what they alleged, their investigation covered a 10-year period, which got progressively worse, as they claim. I think at some point, so my attorney likes to explain it, you know, he commingled funds, and his accounting got sloppy. So I think that combination of those are what doomed me most. And this is the way I kind of explain it. So years before this, if I went to Costco and I spent $700, I always made sure, you know, I mean, I'm not going twice. So, you know, whatever I bought campaign related, I put here, and whatever I did personal, I did here, and immediately paid that. And then, so I got lazy. So instead of those things happening over those 10 years, if I went to Costco this time and I bought mostly campaign related stuff, then I just built both, you know, I just left it that way. And then when I went another time, even though I bought campaign stuff and I bought stuff for the house, then I paid personal, I just left it that way, which was a horrible way to do it. But I got laxed and I got lazy, and I was like, I'm tired of kind of doing this. And
is it overwhelming?
I don't compare myself to any other politician or campaign person or candidate. What I do know is I took my job very seriously. I took campaigning very seriously. I don't care who my opponent was. I walked every single door, every single campaign. And I had campaign workers and people that were just as committed. So, I mean, you could look at my face. I mean, people always knew. They always said, gosh, you run your campaigns like you're running for Congress. You always have 20, 30 walkers. I took care of them. And so if I was spending, you know, $400, $500, $600, $700 a week at Costco, it was because every day I took care of them. Like they never left hungry every single night. I mean, it was a catch to have them there every day. But most of my friends worked, you know, and so they worked 8 to 5, and so they're coming to my house at 5:30, putting on a t-shirt, running out. So yeah, they weren't able to cook anything. So I took care of that 95% of the time. We had weekend walks every Saturday. I made sure we had a barbecue every Saturday. I made sure they were taken care of financially. All of them, you know, did very, very well. And so I just think that, you know, getting really laxed and government wasn't able to point out, oh, you know, he took all these extravagant trips, or he was buying diamond rings, he bought a fur coat, they didn't say any of that. What they did say was that I took $75,000 to help open my lounge, which was not true. Because if you look at the document itself, the government also says there's $85,000 is in his account that we can't account for, so we have to assume it's his personal money, which it was. So the 75 was, now I get the way my attorneys play, well, you can't kind of like decipher the two because, and I get all that, because at what point is the 75? It's whatever your own language says that it was my own money. So
Right.
That's what it was, and that's what I used.
So, and I want to stress that I understand that there are laws that, we all have to follow, and then elected officials are under even more stringent policies
Absolutely.
of to follow as far as commingling funds
Correct.
and
Correct.
and having separate accounts and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess part that I don't necessarily understand is, why did it have to be a prison sentence for it?
Yeah.
Why couldn't it have been you need to do better, and maybe a fine of some sort, or I don't know. But
No, I mean, I think you make a valid point, and I think it's the part that probably that I probably hate the most, because it is a state case, and it should have been a state case. And people before me that have gotten into this type of issue, it was a state case. They had to pay fines. Some of
so
them
who
are
didn't
still
like
paying
you?
fines.
Like, who had something against you?
You know, I won't get into that. I think, as it's been, believe it or not, 6 years now. I mean, it really went fast. Every year I learned something different, and some people in hands that probably played a role. And two people I was close to. And so that hurts a lot.
So what do you do with that?
I don't know. I mean, that's I still don't even know what to do with it.
Have you talked to them?
I have not, I think it was pretty well known that I was more than likely going to run for county commission that next cycle, and I think it was some people that didn't want me to.
Well, even so,
Yeah.
even if somebody wants a job that you want, or they don't want you to have the job,
Right.
but to go to these lengths.
Right. I
And
think it
then
went
you
too
not-
far.
Because also,
Yeah.
I feel like I've known you for a long time. You are a person who will say what needs to be said.
Right.
So
Right.
what makes you not say, hey, I know what you did. I
Yeah.
know.
I think it's coming.
Okay.
I think it's coming. I think because you hear some stuff and then you get more information and then you get more, and it does take time, and it takes time to crack some of these things. But I'm pretty sure now I know there were two individuals that didn't want me there. They knew they would never be able to beat me at the ballot box. And you know what? People can say I sound cocky about that. People can say I sound arrogant about that. But no one was going to beat me in a race. And I think people knew that. I think they knew I had too much funding. I had too much of a team. I mean, even when this happened in the government, I still had $460-something thousand in my campaign. I still had that in my account. So I think people knew that. I think people knew, being the majority leader, I would even raise more. And I think they knew if I wanted the county commission seat, it would be mine. People knew that. That was also the talk of the town. And so what I do think is that the individuals who played a role didn't think it'd get that far. I think they thought that, like you said, the state case. I mean, my attorney's first question was, why are you guys taking these state cases and federalizing them? This is not a federal case. This is a state case. Why are you guys federalizing these cases?
What was the answer?
Well, in the federal government's defense is it was sent to the state. Someone filed a complaint, which I still don't know who that was. I have an idea now. But they sent it to the state, and the state said, no, we can't do this. One person said they were too close, or, Sagaski was the Secretary of State, which again should have been, but said she couldn't. And so she sent it to the Attorney General's office, who was Republican at the time, and the U.S. Attorney was Republican, and they were friends. So there's no doubt in my mind that played a role in it. And then the U.S. Attorney at the time was Trutanovich, and he wanted to make a name for himself. So truly, truly tragic. I think in any other times it wouldn't have been there. It was a case right after mine. Another individual, which I won't name him, but he was an assemblyman. Kind of the same thing happened to, and therefore prosecuted the case. Gave him a fine. Told him, look, you don't meet these conditions, you're going to have a felony. If not, you can go on about your business after you take care of this business. Same thing. Same thing happened to people before me. So it's no doubt that this probably went further than some people thought it was going to go. I think those people feel sorry, but because it went that far and didn't anticipate it going that far. But certainly you got to have people that are willing to play that game, and I think some people did, and it's unfortunate.
In different situations, there have been a few Black politicians in Nevada who have had investigations and or have had to serve some sort of time over the past 20 years or so that I am aware of. And I see that
Only
there
two
are,
of us.
but Black folks, but I haven't seen,
Absolutely.
it has this, are the numbers the same for other
Well,
folks?
they're not the same, and I remember Ralston writing his article about me at the end, and it's it was demeaning. While he tried to say he wasn't making about race, he definitely did, because he named all these other people, and he's still, for someone who's been in politics as long as he has been around politics, that he doesn't see it as black and white, when it definitely, I mean, you got a person, and I'm against it. I've made it known I'm friends with Michelle Fiore, but she
just got pardoned.
Just got pardoned
For a lot, for what looks like a lot more allegations than anything that they listed
and
against
worse.
you. Yes.
And again, she's a friend of mine,
and those were
I'm
extravagant
happy for
things.
her. But I'm just saying, you have to put them on the same pendulum, right? I mean, the cost that we have to pay is a lot steeper than our counterparts. And again, Ralston would say, oh, well, different times, different, but doesn't matter.
Right.
Our people see that these issues are an issue. And, he writes in this article, oh, he had gotten too cocky, he had gotten too flamboyant, he's gotten too, I didn't do anything that any people didn't do before me. Nothing. Matter of fact, I had people say to me in my earlier days, oh, is that the, senators? A senator, I was in the assembly, I'll never forget, a Republican senator said to me, is that the latest iPhone? I go, no. I said, I got to wait, I got to save up some money. He said, oh, if you're spending your own money on these things by now, you're stupid. I mean, come on, one of the first phone calls I got when I got out of the camp and came home was from Senator Reed, happy you're home, So, I think we're not still are not allowed to play with the same deck of cards than our counterparts. Our counterparts, when they act like me or act like I act to get to where I was, oh, he was a bully, or some people were afraid of him. And come on. A lot of people before me, people were afraid of. People were afraid of Barbara Buckley. People were afraid of Marilyn Kirkpatrick. People could perceive them as, he doesn't ever write about that kind of stuff. But if you're a white man, he's sexy. He's
macho.
He's macho. He's bright. He doesn't take anything from anybody. He puts his foot down. We're not allowed to do that, because when we do, we're bullies. We're no one likes us, or this and any other. Look, what I can tell you is I had more friends in the legislature than I had enemies. I know that for a fact. Did I have enemies being there 17 years? Absolutely. It's a part of being there. Ford, when he was there, he had enemies. I mean, we all have enemies. Raggio, as good as he was, some people didn't like him. It's just the way that it is. And what I do know is I was elected by a majority, well, not majority, but unanimous from my caucus to lead them. And the other part of that is so funny and such an irony, is if people felt that way, people used me that way. You know, when people couldn't get something done, they came to me, hey, Kelvin, this person, this lobbyist or this, division, they're not moving. Can you get on them? Can you, I'll never forget, someone sent Barbara Buckley an email when I was still in the assembly, and she was out by then. She sent me that email and she said, yes, you need to do this. And that email said, you guys have a bulldog in your caucus, Kelvin, use him. So it's like, okay, you're able to use me when you want to,
Right.
But when I do it for myself to get something done, then I'm a bully. I'm an arrogant. The caucus used me for it. That was my name. That's what they used me for. Yeah. Oh, you couldn't get something to move. Go get Kelvin. He'll get it done. So it's just, and then you got, again, writers like that, the whole Ralston thing, which the man never liked me. And, I think behind the scenes, he knew what was going on. Yeah.
I think about future generations of folks running for office, and we talk a lot about how we want more people of color, more Black folks, more women, and all of that to run for office. But then we hear these sort of stories. What type of advice or guidance would you give to someone who's thinking about running? Obviously, we can work on not commingling money, right?
That's right.
Because there's that, and I don't want to make light of the fact that some mistakes were made.
Absolutely.
But knowing that we're not allowed, what it feels like you're not allowed to make mistakes, and you're also not given guidance all the time on everything, because there is a limited amount of funds and I think leadership that I've seen for newly elected officials.
Absolutely.
So when they go in, there's nobody on a day-to-day to be like, make sure you don't do this or don't. And if you need this, we can dispatch this person to help you. You don't have a full staff by any stretch of the imagination. So someone who is wanting to run for assembly or Senate next time, like, what advice would you give to them on how to navigate all of this?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's been enough mistakes made. So I think people do need to look at that and look at my story and, some of the other stories and make sure you don't get tripped up with some of those things, obviously. The legislature does have a lot more training than they used to have. And so I think that helps. But I think that you should. Look, I don't think we should focus so much on the other stuff, but we can focus on what we know we can do well. I don't want my story or anyone else's story to discourage the next African-American person to be great. If you think you can do good job in the assembly, you can do a good job in the Senate, city council, or anywhere else, do it. And don't be discouraged by some of this other stuff. Your other tone is, we got to be cleaner than the next person. It's funny because everyone kind of like the whole, Obama thing, he had to be squeaky clean. And he did, but there aren't a lot of the Obamas out there that, everyone has something, has done something, has something in their background, we got lucky with him. He didn't have any, because Lord knows they tried to find it. So the last thing they could do is take his birth certificate. So they, when they couldn't do that, that was their last thing. So, but other than that, being sweet, but I think that's changing too, and unfortunately we have a president now who's changing that, who's making people see that you don't have to be a squeaky clean person to be able to take on.
Is that everybody, or is that?
And you're right. We can't have 34 felonies and win president.
You can't have 34 felonies and get a job at the 7-Eleven.
You can't have 34. You can't even have 34 felonies and even get a pass to be in the White House. So, or even be in the White House staff. So no, absolutely. No, it's not for everybody. But what I'm saying is, he is showing us that we don't have to at least be perfect. Now, can we go to the extreme that he's at? No. I think after him, it won't happen. But we do have to be, I'm sorry, it is showing that there is starting to be someone a little more lenient in people that deserve second chances and people who don't. I mean, because, you know, the rioters as well, what, 15, how many, you know, they're all scot-free. You know, it's, that stuff hurts. When you see that, you know, people killed people, when you see cases that have come after you, when you see, you know, and knowing that, you know, I reached out to try to get, you know, pardon when Biden was left and kind of was left in the cold, you know, because again, it shouldn't have been a federal case, and everyone knows that. But I wasn't able to get it done, but we tried. And then to see people after me get them, you know, for the same offenses, that stuff hurts. Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure I asked you, in the book, you talk about the FBI sort of kind of accosting you at the airport, and you didn't know what was going on at the time, and then they came to the house and all of that you didn't think about calling your lawyer.
Yeah.
Why? You know how frustrated I was reading that,
I know,
and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
This is he's seen television.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you're not a man that ain't been in the streets and know like how the world works.
Yeah.
How come you didn't call your lawyer right away?
Probably the dumbest thing I did. And the other thing, again, when I look back, and I chose not to fight. I took all this plea stuff and just said, forget it. I don't want to fight. I'm done. That I should have. Because I really do think I would have been able to mitigate a lot of what they were talking about. Because a lot of it was just, again, horrible. But I just didn't lost. I just didn't account for stuff. I just did it.
Why didn't you want to fight?
I was tired. I was, 17 years and, fighting for years to get to the top spot. And I just was exhausted. I was exhausted. You know what? I will say the number one reason I didn't either was because one of the things the FBI said to me, and it always stays in my head, is, so we have all these campaign workers that have worked for you for years and years and years. They go through the list, they're naming some of them. Have they ever filed taxes on the money that you've given them? I don't know. I mean, we tell them, that they should, this and the other. Well, we're going to need to talk to them too as this goes further. And I didn't want them being touched. That was number one. I didn't want them bothering them at all. And I didn't think it was fair that they get caught up in it at all. And now they're looking at their taxes and and they're going to use it. I know how they are. They're going to use it to get information. Because what else would you be talking about? These campaign workers know nothing about my campaign finances. They don't know what I write a check for or don't write a check for or use personally. They don't know any of that. So other than that, you're going to bully them. And I wasn't going to let them do that. So that was really number one. Number two, like I said, I was just tired. Why I didn't, I would say that was probably a role where I was probably too full of it. I didn't know what it was about at first. So when they accosted me at the airport, I was just coming back from the governor's ball in Reno. So I was just coming home. When the agent approached me as I was getting ready to go down the escalator to baggage claim, and he introduced himself as Agent Andon with the FBI, I didn't think it was about me. I didn't. I mean, I'll go talk to you in a disclosed room. It wasn't until about 15 or so minutes after I started to get to feel, okay, they're after me. I thought it was like they were questioning me about somebody else or just maybe some people playing funny with some legislation, people giving donations they weren't supposed to. Just that's what I thought it was about. But at 20 or so minutes in, I still thought I was explaining myself well enough to where okay, maybe this will go away. And I just didn't. When we were getting ready to go to my home, I left and they told me they were going to my home. That's when I began to understand how serious it was. And I didn't even have an attorney at the time. But I should have paused everything at the airport and sought legal counsel. Yeah. It's a huge mistake. And I would say that to anybody if it ever happens, because they said themselves multiple times, you don't have to continue. We can, stop here and you can, this and that and the other. But I just, yeah.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you, because you got a lot of new things going on now.
I do.
A lot of good things going on. What is your version of the American dream now for you?
The version of American dream for me is staying with it. I mean, one of the areas I started to delve in before all this happened was, like you said, being an entrepreneur and kind of doing my own thing. And I think that's kind of continuing for me. My dream is to continue to work for me. I put in a lot. Again, people can chastise me for what happened with my finances. But what people can't do is chastise me for the amount of work that I put in. I fought really, really hard for my people. I was a great legislator. I did some amazing things in that building. I've helped a lot of people during campaigns and other stuff with campaign. I remember, and just to diverge just a little bit, I remember a lady approaching me when I was campaigning in the assembly, like maybe my last or second to last term, Hispanic lady, and she said, I have two sons. What do you do? She said, I'm campaigning, canvassing every day. She said, are you? I said, yeah, I'm assuming. She goes, oh my gosh, I have two sons. They need to do some work. Can they come start walking for you? Those kids walked for me for every campaign after that. And there was 10 campaigns, or less, I'm sorry, 5 campaigns after that. Every campaign season they were there. So I know I was making a difference with people. But being an entrepreneur, is giving your time of you for you. Before it was kind of giving time for myself for everything else. And so now it's like when I do stuff, I have a grooming business now, doggydoo.shop. And so that's been really, really, really rewarding. I'm doing real estate now. I've enjoyed that. I wrote a book, which you have a copy of. And so it's allowed me really, to do some of the things that I've kind of wanted to do. I've always wanted to write a book. Obviously, there were a few more chapters that I had in mind, but certainly had this now. I'm thinking about another book as well. I'm enjoying doing the doggy do business. I'm enjoying grooming, which I never thought in a million years that I would enjoy. I enjoy seeing people happy when they pick up their pets. And the real estate thing is something that's kind of new for me, but I'm enjoying that. I've done a few open houses. I'm with Berkshire and Hathaway, so they do a lot of training with us. And so I'm enjoying being an entrepreneur. So what the American dream looks like for me is me investing now in me.
Will you ever run again?
I don't know. People ask me that all the time. Obviously, legislative laws have changed, which would enable me and allow me to run. We just, have an amazing story of a young man in the West Side who has a felony background, but was able to run for office and won. Javon Jackson, absolutely. And so very proud of him.
Podcast.
Yeah, and so the stage is set, but I don't know. I mean, I tell everybody now, if I did it, I would do it the reverse. I would do everything I need to do now. And so if I did it again in, 10 or so years, I could just do that. You know what I mean? I could just focus on just doing that, because I think that kind of is what gets convoluted, especially in our legislative body and with these people that are part-time but are full-time. It's just, that's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
I have enjoyed this conversation. Yeah. I had more questions, but we were running out of time. But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about, your history here in Las Vegas, and the good, the bad, and the lessons that are learned. Because I think one of the biggest things that I hope people get out of this conversation is you can do something and get it wrong, fix it, and then do something else.
That's
Like
right.
that doesn't mean your life is over.
Right.
That doesn't mean that, you know, you have to crawl behind a rock and not show up. You can do hard things,
Right.
and you can keep going. And I think your story says that for anybody, no matter, you know, sex or race or any of
That's
that, you know, we're all imperfect,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to have room for grace.
That's one of the things Biden used to always say too, and he really used to be strong with it back in the day. Is I've been knocked down, but you can get knocked down, but you got to get back up. And it took me a while. I mean, it took me a long time to forgive myself, years, and so it does take time. But when you get there, you just you got to keep going.
That is important to forgive ourselves.
That's right.
Because we can be our worst.
That's right.
Our worst
right.
critic. So
That's right. That's right.
Thank you, Kelvin.
Thank you.
It's been a lovely conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And we're good.
Okay.
Yay.
Can you do a picture with us?
Yes.
When you get ready to do your thing, I'm
Yep.
gonna tease it.
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna tease it today.
Yep.
Say it's coming.
Yeah, we can. Let's get a picture here and then we get one.